name is Gus Moreno. I'm a fiction writer, and the story I'm about to read is called The Great Filter. So I've got an excerpt prepared. The unit below mine apparently ordered fried chicken for dinner. The aroma wandered into my apartment through the vents, the salty smell staggering from the kitchen to the living room. Marin was still at the hospital, working the tail end of a double shift because they lost another nurse. She left a note on the fridge. "Feed me, Seymour." I checked the cupboards, the cabinets under the sink, and the only edible thing I found required a can opener gone missing and a working microwave we didn't own. The smell of chicken was so powerful I walked into the living room and smoked a cigarette. Marin's camera, the one she used to take everywhere with her, sat on the end table. I flipped on the television. The 12,000-year-old man was playing. It's a comedy skit, and the most popular thing on TV since I can remember. Two actors wearing tuxedos sit on stools on an unlit stage, the spotlight on them. The taller, more handsome man, coined the straight man, interviews the other gentleman in a tux, who plays the titular 12,000-year-old man. "We hear your world was quite a violent time." "Boy," the 12,000-year-old man snapped his head back. "They would come into your school and shoot your whole class with a machine gun," he said. "That's awful." "I know. They said we would be reading books in class. All I ever saw were magazines." Laughter thundered off screen from an audience presumably behind the camera, seated in the dark rafters. Their laughs sounded like bowling lanes. "That's awful," the straight man said. "But if there's any consolation, at least you didn't live in one of the developing countries that had succumbed to climate change." "But those countries had the best drinking games," the 12,000-year-old man said. "Really? Like what?" "Last one to find drinkable water dies." Keys jingled in the hallway. Marin swung the door open, her left arm weighed down by a single grocery bag. "Who's hungry?" she said. Marin chopped vegetables, and we ate stir-fry and minute rice, and spent the rest of the night on the couch, listening to police sirens bounce off the walls. I was slapping at my shirt after ash fell off my cigarette. "Why are you smoking with your left hand?" she said. "Just wanted to change the pace." Ever the spontaneous man. At the hospital, Marin assisted in another robotic prosthesis. The patient had lost his hand in a fishing boat's motor blade after it stalled out on the water. The prosthesis was one of those pump-action ones that came with attachments. It just so happened to work on an assembly line. His employer and insurance provider split the costs. "It was the other way around in my day," the 12,000-year-old man said. "Back in my time, you went to college for 4 years, not to prison." "What was that like?" the straight man said. He shrugged his shoulders. "The beds were worse?" "They have a name for what happened to Patrick. It's called lopping, and it was happening everywhere." So The Great Filter is about this futuristic time where people are struggling to work, and this phenomenon called lopping happens, where people mysteriously lose appendages and then get robotic prostheses that assist them in doing their job better. And it becomes a scam that people in the future do to have job stability. And I mean, the premise kind of came about in a series of different things that just popped into my life. I think sometimes when I'm writing a story, one thing will pop up. So for this story in particular, I had watched a video on the New York Times about a robotic prosthesis and how the man who was testing out the prosthesis was talking about how it's literally just thinking in his mind. Like, I just think open the hand and the hand opens, and I think close the hand and the hand closes. And with that, like so many different memories flooded in. This documentary I had seen by Earl Morris, which is about insurance scams that happen in this rural area where people lose hands in fishing boat accidents and collect the insurance money. This documentary about Albert Brooks for his skit, The 2,000-Year-Old Man, I believe. All this stuff just like snapped into place for me, and that's what usually happens when I create a short story, is that these random thoughts come together and the story appears. I would say it took me about 3 or 4 months. I think this was back in a time where I didn't write every day. I think there's some beginning writers who just feel like they have all the time in the world, and I was one of them, where I didn't practice writing. I would just let the story come to me, and with that, I just kind of just crafted the story in my head little by little until I would get the bigger pieces. So with this story, I probably waited maybe like 3 or 4 months, and then the actual writing of it was much, much shorter. That is a very good question. Really good short stories. I mean, they're first of all they're contained, and they. When I think about like my favorite short stories, they're short stories that encapsulate like this other world, and it doesn't have to be like a science fiction world or some type of fictional world not similar to our own. Like, as long as the short story creates some type of culture and vocabulary on its own, um, I'm immediately like engrossed in it, and I need to have some type of journey that happens to the main character. I think that's two of like the biggest pluses. A lot of times you read a short story and it's just a slice of life, and I mean those short stories are great too, but those aren't the ones that strike me. Yeah, my favorites are the ones where it's like a pretty much like a novel length story, just in such a concentrated format of the short story. That to me, it just seems so perfect. Like there's not an ounce of fat on it. It's just so lean, and every word is necessary. Those are my favorite short stories. Hmm. I would say that is a very good question. I would say to study the magazines that you like. I think a lot of times you write a submission manager to try to find, and I mean a submission manager website, like Duotrope. I think there's dark markets too. I'm not sure if I'm getting that name wrong, but I would say to actually find short story places that you actually like and read the work. That's a piece of advice that has always been thrown my way, and it's something I've always found online. It feels very, very cliche in the short story writing world, but it works. Like, you can't just blindly submit to some place without knowing that the work that they're interested in. So I would say research the places that you want to submit to, find short story places that you like, and work to submit to those places. My first short story accepted to a paying market. I think that would be the Burnt Tongues anthology that I was in. This was an anthology edited by Richard Thomas and Dennis Widmeyer and Chuck Palahniuk. And all three of them, I mean, are amazing artists. Dennis Widmeyer did oh my gosh, he did Pet Sematary, the recent Pet Sematary movie. And Richard Thomas is a fantastic neo-noir horror writer. And then Chuck Palahniuk is Chuck Palahniuk. So that was my first pain market, which was kind of this unicorn situation that I was so happy to be a part of. Oh, my favorite sushi place is this sushi place in Japan. It is right outside there. Oh, I forget the name of the baseball stadium. It's the one with with a roller coaster coming out of like the building. There is a sushi place outside of it. By far, one of the best the best sushi places I've ever been to. Favorite superhero? I'm going to have to go with. I'm going to be basic and say Wolverine. 。 Oh yeah. I'd like to give a shout out to my wife, Monse Moreno. I'd like to give a shout out to the fine people at MCD Books. We are collaborating. Well, I mean, collaborating, such a weird word. I've signed with them. I'm going to be having my debut novel come out in October. So MCD Books, like, such an amazing place to be at. The novel's name is This Thing Between Us. So if everybody's interested, check that out.